Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 820 with a review of Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you, or sometimes a Netflix near you. We're talking about the latest Knives Out film. Stephen Miller, why don't you remind these fine folks listening what you've kind of thought about the Knives Out franchise as it is now over the last few installments?
Yeah, so I've always enjoyed the Knives Out franchise. You and I saw the first Knives Out at the Toronto Film Festival in, I guess it was probably 2019.
Yep.
And that was one of those situations where I think you loved it. I assume it made your top 10 that year. I didn't do my homework and check.
That's a good question.
I think it probably did. I think it was at least your number one or two of the festival. Like you were very high on it. And I enjoyed it. Like I had fun with it. But for me, I think the energy of the crowd carried it a lot. I walked away thinking, wow, what a fun, refreshing thing for Rian Johnson to do after directing a Star Wars movie. But I didn't walk away thinking, this is amazing. I cannot wait for more. I was kind of like, I was happy it existed, but it felt like a fun trifle to me. When Glass Onion came out, again, I liked it quite a bit. It felt a little heavy on the gimmick, and it again was one of those things where I felt like I like that this is being made, but I don't know how much it stands alone as a piece of storytelling, so much as being a fun magic trick, that Rian Johnson is pulling off. Which, again, all of these things are me still liking a movie. Just, it was never anywhere near, like, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It was always just a thing that I appreciated. So I was very curious going in for the number 3 installment, because oftentimes that can be a dip down. And are we allowed to talk about our initial reviews out of TIFF this year? Or how do we do this? Have we ever done this before, where we re-review after a festival later?
I feel like we've done it before. But yeah, I mean, it's fair game. People, true fans of the podcast have listened to our TIFF reviews, so they know what we thought about the film coming out of that. And, you can talk about it. When we get into the main overall review, you can give broader context about whether all those feelings still stood and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I guess my short version is, out of TIFF, I loved this one. It was like easily my favorite, and it wasn't clear to me if that was festival brain. There were a lot of things going on in our kind of binge watching session of that week, but it immediately leapt to the top for me, because it just felt like it was, in addition to being very funny and very clever, it felt like it was about something. And I was very curious to revisit it now in the sober light of day and see, do I still feel like that holds, or was I kind of riding the festival high of just being glad a movie was entertaining in a festival that had a lot of great things, but also a good number of duds, And eventually in a festival, you're kind of worn down and you just want to laugh. You just want to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, for me, I've been a big fan of just Rian Johnson's work in general. As you said, I was a huge fan of the original Knives Out. I did check while you were talking. It was my number 5 film of the year. Okay. And my number 10 was The Death of Dick Long. So,
oh, nice. Two movies that have equally been remembered in the culture.
But yeah. So I was a big fan of that. I still very much like the second film, but there was a little bit, I've commented different times that, there's a little bit of the talking about the now, quote unquote, of like where culture was at the time that film came out, and trying to comment on it, that kind of didn't rub me the wrong way, but just didn't really hit that criticism of the world we were in. Wasn't exactly landing for me, but I still really enjoy the work that he does and what he puts into things. It's kind of funny. When we were recording a review of The Chronology of Water, you mentioned like the way it feels to like really, really vibe on a film and then bring a bunch of people to watch it, and then you're now watching it through the eyes of the people you bring with you, and you're like freaking out about like, oh my god, do they care the way I care? Did I make a mistake bringing people to watch this? What's going on? I have the exact opposite of that, with certain filmmakers, Rian Johnson being one, Christopher Nolan being another, where when I go to watch their films, I'm a little bit scared because like they have so many hits for me and I love their work so much that I'm like, this is going to be the one that disappoints me. This is going to be the one that disappoints me, right? So coming out of the festival, I really like this film, but I was almost like tamping down how I felt about it because I was like, I didn't know if it was as good as I felt it was, or if it was just I was on a high for liking it. So it was like I wasn't fully like willing to just exuberantly say that I loved it. I was kind of just like, I think I really like this film. It seems
so for
like
you, when you then watch this with someone else, like I'm going to hazard a guess that Jamie watched it with you, Joanna watched this with me at least. Do you have that feeling of looking out of the corner of your eye and seeing if like, did they laugh at that line? Are they enjoying it the way I did? Like, do you have that fear, or do you have the kind of, are you more focused on yourself and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to like it again. I don't really care what's happening around me. Because I still get that stress when I show anyone anything that I've said was good before.
Yeah.
Even if I tempered expectations.
I mean, this film has a cheat code in it in that not only do I believe this is a good film, but its subject matter is a subject that resonates with Jamie in a way that I was pretty confident I knew how she was going to feel walking out of the film. So I wasn't worried in this case. But the first time I watched it, I was definitely like, you know, I'm watching it the whole time trying to feel like, do I really love this? Am I enjoying this? Like, what's going on? And it's also sandwiched between so much stuff that I really, really liked it coming out of TIFF, but I wasn't sure how I really, really felt. Like, did I like it, or did I like it? So, you know, I'm excited to find out for everybody here if I liked it. All right, ready to get started?
Sure.
All right, let's take a listen to the trailer for Wake Up Dead Man, A Knives Out Mystery, and then come back and give everybody a review.
You're the only one on stage with the Monsignor at the time of his killing. You're the only one at that church who hated his guts.
The spirit really moved him today, huh?
So tell me, what the hell happened?
Everyone thinks I did it. I didn't do it.
This goes way beyond normal police work. This is something you and I have not experienced. A perfectly impossible crime.
This case is solvable, right?
I'm incapable of not solving a crime. Well, you'll see. It's fun.
Wicks had a vast family fortune.
If made public, can ruin people.
God forbid.
It is time to discover what this flock of wicked wolves is hiding.
There's some Scooby-Doo shit going on here.
Scooby-Doo. With all the pieces on the table, this crime appears impossible.
Makes me sick. These kids painting rocket ships all over his sacred resting place.
All right, so that was the trailer for Wake Up Dead Man, A Knives Out Mystery. Benoit Blanc is back, and he is investigating another crime. This time it's taking place in a very small Catholic church where a priest has been murdered. Stephen Miller.
Most foul.
Most foul. What did you think of Wake Up Dead Man, A Knives Out Mystery?
So I still thought this movie was great. And it's interesting because I watched this at home on Netflix on the couch. I almost made it out to a theater because Opera Plaza was still playing it. And so I thought maybe it would be worth trying to make it happen. But at the end of the day, laziness won out for me. Figured I didn't want to have to put on pants on Saturday. And what's interesting, I don't know about you, but for me, watching something at home, comedies play differently. Because in a theater, I'm an easy laugh, and the audience around me is laughing, and we're all sharing in it together. At home, whether I'm watching alone, whether I'm watching it with Joanna or with a friend, I still enjoy comedy, but I'm way less likely to like burst out laughing. You know, you feel kind of like a maniac, like sitting alone on your couch, bursting out laughing. Now, I know you've told many stories of Jamie hearing you laughing from the other room, so...
Steven, I am the exact opposite. I maniacally laugh when I'm alone, and I'm more like tamped down in a theater because I've had people recognize my laugh in a theater when I'm not sitting with them before. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like more self-conscious in the theater than I am when I'm, by myself.
Wow. We are just two very different people. Because for me, that has always been true. And I still love comedies at home, but it's different because there's something about laugh lines when you and or the audience are laughing, the rhythm of it, where then when it continues, it's like continuing over your laughter. And there's a kind of different dynamic to it. So this movie has such an immense density of jokes in the writing. Like, there are a lot of very funny lines, clever throwaway visual gags, a lot of things that get you, right?
Yeah.
And at home, they didn't play quite the same way for me. I still found them funny, but I didn't find myself being overwhelmed or carried by them. But because of that made me focus more on the part of the movie that I really enjoyed, which was, is this telling a compelling story? Does this have an interesting message? Is this saying something, right? Is this moving? And absent the LOL experience of young, dumb, and full of Christ and all the things that got me so good in the theater the first time, I just had to sit and be like, damn, this is a damn good movie in its own right.
Yeah.
Just the construction of it, I think is so clever and so well done. Watching it again, I did, much like we talked about with Chronology of Water, I had some times when I was a bit worried, like, oh boy, this is maybe about to drag. I kind of feel like I hyped this up too much. And whenever I would have that feeling, it's like Rian Johnson knew I was feeling that and would immediately shake things up. Yeah. It's like, it is so precisely timed to give you just as many vegetables as you need to be given before giving you like a piece of candy and then going back to vegetables. And by vegetables, obviously, I mean, the whole movie is fun, but like the first 40 minutes or so of this movie are all prologue, right? Benoit Blanc does not show up for quite a while in this movie. Yeah. And right when I was feeling like, whew, I really feel like this needs to become a zany murder mystery right now, is when it became a zany murder mystery. Like, I was very impressed with how finely tuned this movie was. There are scenes that I found very surprisingly emotional in the theater. Specifically, there's a scene involving a phone call with Bridget Everett that kind of comes out of nowhere. And in the theater, it kind of took my breath away. I had no idea it was coming. And now I knew it was coming. I knew exactly when it was going to happen. I was watching for it. I was waiting to see how Rian Johnson prepared us for the moment. And even though I knew it was coming, I still found it shockingly moving. I couldn't believe how well it worked, even surrounded by the zany antics of, Southern fried Benoit Blanc and all the goofiness of the Knives Out thing. Like, he really, really, really nails the pathos in this movie. And I find that just incredible. You talked about Glass Onion and how you felt like that was talking about the now a little bit too much. And it's funny because Wake Up Dead Man is very specifically talking about the now. Of course, it's talking about universal themes, but it is, in terms of commentary on socio-political stuff, it is extremely, it's like you're scrolling through Blue Sky in 2025, it is a very, very, very hyper current movie. And I'll be curious to hear for you how you feel about that this time around, because for me, I love it because I think it is so sharp, and it is also identical to my cultural references. Like, Rian Johnson just seems to be like tailor-made for me as a cinephile, former fundamentalist of a very particular age. Like, it just feels like every joke and every reference really landed in this movie in a way that to me, it made it a really interesting time capsule. You should butt in and say something.
So I think the difference for me is that you have the one politician character and you have the author character that are connected to the now in this film. Everyone else is just a normal person who has their own things about them, but like they're real characters.
And the aspiring filmmaker type.
He's the politician character.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. I was already thinking of who the figurehead was going to be, but we won't spoil it.
Yeah. So like those are the two characters that are that. In Glass Onion, every character is this caricature of somebody that is online and is disconnected from anything that's real. And it just kind of like when they're having parties with like Yo-Yo Ma and stuff, like it just, all of that felt very weird. And like nobody at those parties felt like a real person. They felt like the idea of a type of person, and that all these ideas were at a party together, not like real characters were at the party together. That's kind of what I meant by like too much about these personality types and not about characters who have those personalities. So that's kind of how I got around it in this film, is that like no one character was only about that thing. They also had more going on about them, and it was more, insular. Like obviously the whole like Glass Onion is about a tech pro. Right. Yeah. So it's hard to escape that aspect of that. But, there's just a lot there that was kind of just commenting on that. And I just didn't find it that biting. It felt kind of just whatever. This is more, this feels like it is more insightful than what that was to that subject matter.
Yep. I agree. And not to keep leapfrogging into what I think your review is going to be about, but another thing that I remember you talking about in TIFF was the fact that this, unlike the other two Knives Out movies, which are very much ensemble pieces, this has an ensemble, but it is very heavily weighted to a few characters, and then most of them don't get as much to do. And I paid more attention to that on the second time around, and I definitely agree that is true. For me, that almost helps with your how obsessed with the now and being relevant is it, because like even if a few characters were more ideas or cookie cutters, they're like allowed to be, because the narrative is not resting on them, right? The narrative does not rest on this author being a three-dimensional person who we vibe with, like in a very particular way.
Yeah,
right?
and if you're in the POV of one character, that's the thing that's going to stand out to that character.
Course.
So it's like it makes sense that you are fixated on that one piece of their character. Yeah, so it feels more normal to me in that context.
Definitely, yeah. So the two things that I really love about this movie, one, I think the saying message feels so dumb. It isn't like, I think it's a bold, shocking message, but the themes the movie is wrestling with, the idea of grace versus anger and trying to defend yourself from the world versus being open to the world, and how that plays in with a murder mystery or even the conceits of the murder mystery genre and what we go for in entertainment. All that I think is just beautifully done. And then I love, and we said this in our TIFF review too, I love how Rian Johnson, he knows enough about movie making to not be content with just telling the story. He's like playing with the way that you tell the story. And 3 movies in, he's playing with letting the audience know that he knows what we expect is going to happen, and having fun with the fact that he's going to pull the rug out from under us. And it's this like nesting doll of like what I think he's going to do and what he knows I know he knows I think he's going to do. And it all becomes this just very fun romp. And the Benoit Blanc is not as central a character here as he was in the first 2 installments. But what he becomes is the kind of Rian Johnson character who is like delighting in playing with the way he solves mysteries. And I don't know, there's just something really cool about it to me, where this is the Penn and Teller trick of explaining the trick while also having it work for you. And not only is Rian Johnson playing Penn Jillette, Daniel Craig is playing Penn Jillette, and we are watching other people watch this magic trick unfold, and it all is working for them and for you. It's just such a fun work of storytelling. I don't know. I was really taken with this movie. It isn't like I think it is the #1 movie of the year. It's not the kind of thing that blows me away like that, but it is far and away my favorite Knives Out movie. And with that, did it still hold up for you too?
Yeah, I mean, it 100% held up for me. I think this film was brilliant. I think I watched it more. I liked it more the second time that I watched it. Part of that is just for the ability to watch certain characters' performances earlier in the film before information about them later in the film. Yep. Like, that was kind of a really fun thing to see moments of stuff that will play in later. I always enjoy that when a filmmaker they're not really tipping their hand. It's just that, like, once you can see, it's not just like it's completely made up later. It's like, yeah, all the evidence was technically there if you could see it. So that's really, really fun. But I think just what makes this film so great is that, it is really about something, right? Like, at the start of this film, there is no murder mystery. Like, we are watching just a film. Like, I would watch a film where Josh O'Connor is just a priest sent to this one place, and it's just about him. Like, if this was Doubt, but like, male priest, characters, like just these two guys like doing this thing, I would have totally watched that film. Like, when this film starts, there is not a scheme. There is not anything. All the momentum in this film that moves towards what happens, all happens during this film. It is a self-contained thing. The things get set in motion that cause the spark that allows for this event to take place. So not only is this, as the trailer is speaking to it, a perfectly impossible film, a locked door mystery, it's like the motives are also locked in the same box that the murder mystery is happening in, which makes it so interesting to see how all these different dynamics play it. It's just so much interesting stuff is going on. But like, having this priest character be the center of things, like, so if you look back at the last two films, they all center around, I'm going to be trying to see, like, these films are so disconnected that, like, I feel like you can spoil the previous films, even though they are plenty old. But I'll say that
Joanna had not seen the previous Knives Out movies, and I was like, okay, before this starts, I'll give you the context. And then I was like, Daniel Craig plays a detective. That's kind of it.
Yeah. But I will say that, like, there's always some interesting context around at least one of the characters, right? Ana de Armas's character in the first film is a character who's in a situation who it would be obvious to assume they are the person that did it. And we, the audience, know that they didn't do it, but all the evidence points to the fact that they probably did it. But we, as the audience, know they didn't, and we're watching that dynamic play out of how does a person that looks on paper clearly guilty convince everybody that they're not, when it behooves them to believe they are guilty because of context, right?
Yeah.
The second film, which I'll definitely be as vague as possible about, is a specific character being in a context in which everyone else doesn't understand the context there in that story. And it's really interesting to see how that dynamic plays, the way they interact with all the characters, the way the characters interact with them, knowing what those characters know about that character. He puts people in situations that's really, really interesting. In this one, by having it be a priest in this impossible mystery situation where the priest feels that he is guilty, but in a different context than this murder, but it's like he killed him in his heart, so he wants to like confess to things that he didn't necessarily do. And the way this film plays with who knows what when and what they want to say, given the context of how that will play in the situation and how that will be perceived by other people. There's so many layers to what's going on, not just story-wise, but the emotionality and the way it brings faith into things and what certain things mean. What characters know versus what they are willing to say they know for the sake of other people is just, it's beautiful, it's impactful, it's just intellectually just really, really fascinating. And like, I can see one version of somebody making this story where like Benoit Blanc is the man of science and the priest is the man of faith, and they just butt heads, and the science guy is like, ha ha ha, faith, and the priest guy is like, ha ha ha, science, right? And like, this is so far from that it's kind of magical. Like, it is really like, you know, they have their first introductions, like their meet cute as like a buddy cop duo, where they kind of talk about how they kind of believe their things, but they're always so inviting to the other person's point of view. And as the situation gets more and more complex and they start dealing with that, they're so willing to step into the other person's territory and see things from their vantage point and like cross that bridge and talk about things in this unexplainable way that they can't talk to each other normally in. And it's just, this film is like, it really feels like Rian Johnson cares about the subject matter, and he's not just playing in the space. He's like coming at it with real, true feeling and emotion. He's thought about these concepts, and he's not just using it as a stepping stone to get to this mystery. He's like there's a reason. This is not just, I haven't done a movie in a church yet, so I'll do that. It's like, it feels like this story can only be told in this context. And it just, it's not just, ooh, this is a new character. It's like, this really needs to be told this way. And I think it's just a brilliant way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. I think it's interesting because what I like about it, and I'm curious what a more devout person would feel rather than someone like me who grew up very devout but has since lapsed, so I can like appreciate talking about faith without it being a source of absolute truth for me, is this movie has a lot of fun, is almost too light a word to say. It finds a lot in the idea of religion as one form of storytelling among many, and storytelling as a thing that can provide value or can cause harm depending on who is telling it and where they wield it. And, you know, there's the conversation in the meet cute between Benoit Blanc and Father Judd is all about like, this cathedral is built to tell a story, and you know, it's a facade, right? It has more in common with Disneyland than it does with like the 1600s, right? And yet we come here and the big question is like, does the story resonate? Does it do something for you? And the meta levels are so obvious, right? Like Rian Johnson is talking about storytelling and why we do this thing, and he is creating his own story to try to lead you into having certain feelings about grace, you know, and what does it mean to love other people. But that's easy for me to say as someone who can call all of this stuff metaphor and be happy and walk home. I'd be curious to know someone who would have been a devout parishioner in that church, right? Who, like Haley Spaney's character, right? Someone who is going hoping to be healed, right? Someone who really genuinely believes. I wonder what kind of chord this strikes, if it feels like an accurate portrayal of faith or if it feels like a Hollywood atheist portrayal of what could be beautiful about faith theoretically from the outside. It's something I wonder. I couldn't quite channel the younger evangelical version of me to find an answer.
Yeah, and you know, I would assume that some people in that bucket might say, and I'm being vague, just I'm not trying to not attribute specific people's words. I'm literally just trying to like assume that some people might say there's not a difference between those two things, right? Mm-hmm. Like that if you find the value in it without starting from the meaning, that actually the meaning is still applying to you. Mm-hmm. So like the fact that you are leaning towards it as story that leads you somewhere good is still the purpose of it in the first place. So like you're still getting the effect of it without, like, the meaning will come later if you start with understanding that the benefit of the story gets you to the meaning eventually. Right. Yeah. Poorly articulated, but you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. I think it's what's interesting to me. So I was never raised Catholic, right? I actually didn't do my homework to know if Rian Johnson was, or if he just said it in a Catholic Church because it's more of a Gothic setting, right? Priest is more exciting than saying like youth group pastor.
Yeah, regular Christian churches don't have an enclosed box just to the side
Exactly.
of the pulpit.
Exactly. And there's also not a rich history of murder novels and stuff like that set in those places.
Yeah.
But a lot of the commentary, at least politically speaking, in the way religion dovetails with politics, I read it much more for evangelical Christianity, because that is, at least in my understanding, the sect that did wed itself to Trump and did become oddly tied to this message that is so anathema to the core preachings of Christ, right? And what I can't reconcile, this is me literally just talking about religion instead of talking about the movie, because it's what the movie made me think about, is a lot of evangelical Christianity is predicated on the idea of this is not just a helpful story, this is the capital T truth. And people who say this is just a helpful story, that's like wishy-washy, fake, progressive, blah, 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 blah. And an area where I don't know if this is hiding in the film or what Rian Johnson would think is, are there parishioners of this church who at the end of this story literally believe in everything that is being preached? Or is it all a metaphor for all of them and they've all kind of bought into the idea that this is a beautiful story we tell ourselves? I know I'm not really making sense. I just wonder if if the Wicks of the world and their ability to corral this into something hateful, if that is avoidable without also throwing out the like fundamentalist absolutism that comes with like the type of church that I grew up in. Because everything I love about like movies that explore faith in an interesting way, they always do this. They always explore it in this is the value it brings people, not what if they believe it's literally true.
Yeah. I don't have an answer for you, Stephen.
Yeah. And I don't think Rian Johnson is interested in it. It's just these are the kind of things that I found myself thinking about while watching Daniel Craig do a ridiculous, Southern voice and try to solve a murder mystery.
Yeah. But I do love, like, because if you ask a random stranger who's consumed the previous two films, that, like, I would assume that the average person would assume that Benoit Blanc would have an explanation for how a supposed Jesus would have arisen 3 days later, right?
Right.
But this film lets him talk about that story as valuable and at least meet somebody who believes it as an equal and not somebody who is foolish to him, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody who doesn't believe his ability to solve a crime is foolish, but not somebody who believes in the stories in the Bible. So I know there's it would have been easy to have a character that's portrayed as this like intellectual person to be against faith, but the way he plays into it is really interesting in this film.
No, you're right. And there's something about the there's an earnestness to this movie that feels kind of daring to me, which I like. Like, if I compare this to Calvary, which is a movie that I think we both loved when it came out, but Calvary is a deep exploration of faith, but I would not say Brendan Gleeson's character is an avatar of a intensely devout religious person, right? Like, he is someone for whom faith has always mattered and he grew up caring about it. But it's different hearing that grizzled priest ruminate about why we should be alive. Is it worth living at all? What has the church done? Versus Josh O'Connor doesn't just say God and faith. He talks about Jesus, like Jesus forgave me. Jesus let me do this again. And like there is a real sincerity that does kind of undercut this idea I was saying before about it all being a story that's just helpful, right? Yeah. Like the movie isn't afraid of letting its protagonist be very openly devout and use language that like I feel like a lot of people would skirt away from, because at least for me, the former fundy in me like feels a little like squeamish when I hear someone talking about like letting Jesus help you, because it feels so like Sunday school, it reminds me of being a little kid. And there is a like interesting tension there between Benoit Blanc and Father Judd, because they do have very, very different worldviews and openness for speaking honestly about things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it helps that he's also a boxer, so
it's true. He can.
He's not just a nerd, right? He's
Yep.
But I will say too, it's not just when they have the dialogue. It's like that scene that you talked about where that phone call, that emotional phone call. Benoit Blanc just sits down at the desk and waits for it to happen. Like, he understands the importance of that call. He's not like, there could have been him like doing the finger motion, like, come on, but he just sits down and just like and just waits for it, because he has a respect for what's happening there. Like, before that moment, he's like, tick tock, we gotta go. But then when the call happens,
do you think he starts with that respect, or is he learning that respect in the moment?
In the moment, or just over the course of the film?
Over the course of the film.
Both.
Because I think it's an arc over the film of him. And he starts out still being kind enough, right? Like, their meet cute is not confrontational. But I do think he goes on an arc in this movie, too. And it has something to do with leaving room for something different than just objective truth.
I think I could make an argument that in their meet cute at the beginning, he is testing Josh O'Connor's ability to have a back and forth about the subject matter, and that he's already starting from a place of more respect, but offering questioning dialogue to see if he will engage in the other direction. If he's going to be like, oh, I can see you're one of those guys, or he's going to go like, oh no, you're actually right. Like, I can, like, the fact that he responds so openly back in the other direction and goes like, actually, you're 100% correct, and says all the stuff about, as you said, like having more commonplace with Disneyland or whatever. You could make the argument that he's like, he would have already been like that, but he wanted to see where he was in the opposite direction and then allow them to engage moving forward from there. So
yeah. I have one question, and we probably don't have to dig into spoilers for it, but my question is about the duration that the film takes place over, because there's a framing device around specific holidays, that things take place on. And I was trying to figure out, if you asked me, gun to my head, after the first movie, I would have said, yeah, this movie takes place on those famous holidays with all the symbolism, tied to them. Watching it now, I don't know, because a hell of a lot happens between the inciting event and the kind of denouement of the film, and I can't tell how many days that is.
Yeah. Well, because there's a bunch of time before, as you said.
Well, we don't know, because I think we watched this movie. There's a framing device at the beginning of the movie that we think we know where it's headed, and then we actually find... This movie is framed around writing a letter, and your intuition when you watch a movie like this is someone writing a letter about what happened and then mailing it to Benoit Blanc to see if he'll take the case, and light spoilers that gets subverted in some way. So I think the timeline might actually work even for literally being 3 days later, but I couldn't tell. I was a little stuck with how much stuff happens for that to actually be the timeline.
So that makes sense. So we have unknown amount of time for how long he'd been at the church before Monsignor Wicks dies.
Yeah.
And then that time was there because there's a certain thing that has to arrive in a time that coincides with a time that would make sense for it to happen.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense.
Cool. I'm just saying that's a really long Friday night and Saturday.
All right. Should we get to verdicts?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Stephen Miller, if you were going to give us a must-see, record with a caveat, wait for rental, pass the caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
I'm going must-see. I think this is a just brilliantly written movie. I think it's executed wonderfully, and I love that Rian Johnson is taking these fun genre exercises and using them to talk about things he's passionate about. And in this case, that just really resonated with me, as evidenced by our 10-minute detour where I just questioned what place fundamentalism has in the modern world. So sorry about that for anyone who didn't enjoy that part. But this movie, I'm a sucker for movies that really explore faith, because I think they're quite rare. And this, I think, was just beautifully done.
Yeah. It is a must-see from me as well. So, yeah, everybody should watch this. And if you haven't seen the other ones, they're all worth a watch as well. It is funny, Stephen. I was thinking, because in the TIFF review, I talked about how, Benoit Blanc doesn't even show up until, I guess, 45 minutes into the movie.
What is the actual time? Did you check this time?
So I didn't check his appearance, but I checked when the death happens. So Glenn Close screams at 36 minutes in. So that's there's a few minutes of people shuffling and looking in the hallway and everything. And then when she screams, and then Josh O'Connor puts his hands up and goes whatever he says, it was right before the episode. That's 36 minutes in. And I was like, that's forever before anybody dies.
Yeah.
I went back to Glass Onion. Technically, somebody has died before that movie starts. But,
okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but the first death we see on screen is an hour into that movie.
Wow.
It's pretty wild.
That's what happens in that first. I remember not liking the first half that much.
Because the whole conceit of that movie is you're essentially watching an entire movie, and then you're watching an entire movie again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of.
I guess maybe that movie you don't notice it. You don't notice the delay quite as much, because the whole premise of their trip is a what do you call it? Those murder mystery parties.
Yeah, it's a murder mystery party,
yeah.
and
so the
then
concept of murder is kind of being funneled to you the whole time. So you get more signposts saying, hey, something's going to happen.
Yeah. But anyways, that is our review of Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at sdavidmiller.com or Blue Sky at sdavidmiller.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or ChristopherIRL on a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that. That's it for this week. We're taking off. Next week, Avatar, Fire and Ash.
Hell yeah.
So, hopefully, I don't know, we're going to watch it, Steven.
There hasn't been a lot. If there are reviews, I haven't read any yet, but I've heard podcast episodes about other things where I know people speaking in them have seen the movie already, and I'm getting just a little bit of sideways hints that this might be a dip down below the others, but we'll see. We'll see.
But Steven, it's got fire.
I'm seeing it in IMAX. I'm seeing it in a totally packed IMAX in a terrible seat, just to get to have the experience.
Yeah, I think I'm not getting to see it until Sunday night for the same reason. I was terrible, slightly less terrible. Let's do it. But Steven, I still get excited every time.
Oh, sure. It's going to be a spectacle. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to do it. I don't know. I know it's going to be great. The watching of it is going to be great. I don't know if the movie's going to be great.
Yeah. This is actually my first time seeing an Avatar movie in a real IMAX. So
dang.
Put that in your Fire and Ash.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
We'll see you next time. Bye.